everyone. This is our entrepreneurship series. My name is Audra Lavoie. I'm an alumni career advisor at URI. And this series it's a great example of entrepreneurship in itself, because it was like this little idea that got super big. It was going to be a one full day workshop where we could kind of dive in and be very hands-on, but walking through these different phases. And of course, with our current environment, everything changes. And what it wound up being is I don't want to drop it, because I think this is actually a really important time to be talking about entrepreneurship. Brittany, who's one of our guests, her and I had a conversation a month or two ago where we were talking about multiple streams of revenue. So she was saying, one of the things that gives me security is having a business and having a job and being able to lean on whichever one I need to at the time. So this was too important not to follow through with. And it wound up becoming this big collaboration between Dee Chatham, who's the director at URI Innovate, and John Dunn, who works in the College of Business, and Linnell Bickford, who is in the URI Foundation. So big thing that became 9 webinars, 3 weeks, and then still walking through the phase. So the goal is really to focus on things that work for you. So when we're talking about entrepreneurship, it could be a big idea. We had 2 speakers earlier in this week that were big ideas. One had a business that had been a family business that he has brought in new directions and continue to grow. Another one has built out a multi-million-dollar company. Gina and Brittany have companies that are their own, that they're beginning and have had for both of them for over 1 year. Gina, you've been like a year and a half. Brittany, I think you've been more like 2 years with it. So these businesses that grow, and this is the best part. It's really what works for you and what works for you today. So it might be a no cost, low cost, or high cost, but the focus is on you. Quick notes. I do record these sessions, and I will follow up with everyone to share the recording afterwards, which gives you great pause to go back. I will take some notes. I will share if there's any resources that Gina or Brittany say or share, or if there's something they say in response to somebody, I'll put a quick note. I'll share those out to everybody. At any point, you can use the chat feature, or you can use our Q&A feature, and I will speak those questions. We'll also can take pause, and you can unmute yourself and speak your own questions, whatever works. The disclaimer, this is based on their experience. Gina and Brittany are both alumni of URI. They're taking their time sharing what they have experienced. It is not meant to be personal coaching. And then real quick, I just want to talk about the things that we spoke earlier in the week. And it's businesses that work for you. How I'm defining that is to say, what is the time you can put it into? What's the risk you're willing to take? Financially, what can you invest in? And then the 2 most important ones, which I think you'll hear more from Gina and Brittany, is what do you want to spend your time on? And what is your personal purpose for starting a business? Types of business, this simplifies it, but we're just putting it into a few different categories. So what you'll see is Gina and Brittany both have a product. Gina's is a tangible physical product. Brittany is on this coaching and consulting side. So we're touching on a couple of different businesses, but you might have one that is the development of a product being physical or intellectual property. It might be service delivery, and that could be something like I am the educator, or I am the person cleaning or removing. It's a service, or I'm connecting you to the service. Manufacturing, the creation of a product. Reselling, where I take something that I purchased really low, or that I took and created in a whole different way, and reselling that. Social media, blogs, and affiliate sales, these kind of get wrapped up into one, because a lot of it is I need to have a presence. And when I have a social media presence, when I become something that someone is following, then I might be making money by having advertisements or by having affiliate sales. I'm endorsing those products. And then coaching and consulting. Your existing foundation, so thinking, and this goes a little bit off of the worksheet I sent everyone who had registered. What talents do you already have? What's your area of expertise? What does that network look like in getting niche? So I want to ask you all my fun question, which is your chance to open and utilize your Q&A or the chat. But it's Friday. This is a good time for fun. We're going to play pretend for a second, and I'm going to say, if you had $10 million, so we're going big, $10 million to start, but it's earmarked to start a business, what is the business you choose? So $10 million today to start a business, any business you want, what are you going to choose? So you can write your answers. I'm just typing in here into the Q&A or into the chat feature. Tell me what you're thinking. If you're using these features, especially chat, if you put it out to all participants, everyone will be able to see. I had one answer that was, oh, I gotta go back to it. Cafe. VR cafe across the country. What else? A green cemetery or community space. Nice. Gina, $10 million. What business would you start with that, or would you take yours and make it a $10 million business?
Oh, you're asking me, sorry. Yeah, I would invest in my business. Yes, for sure. I would have to figure out how to make it scale it up, make it scalability, and I would invest it into bringing it to different communities across the country, because right now it's all handmade and custom. So figuring out how to bring it into economies of scale and reach more people.
Brittany, how about you? $10 million?
Definitely, I would invest it in my own business. I would actually hire people for help instead of doing it all myself. So
yeah. I'm going to answer it too, because these are the things we talk about in my house all the time. I love quiz questions. For myself, it would be a community center. That's something that I really love. I have 2 children, and my younger one is starting an everything store. So she's allowing me to put my community center there. You might see that in 20, 30 years. All right. Our guests, you've already heard their voices. Gina Caramadre, BS from Entrepreneurial Studies, Brittany Diamond, BA Communication. They have generously given of their time today, and I'm very fortunate to have them. They're also individuals who've given, so today obviously they're taking the time and spending it, and we had prep time, so we've talked about our sessions before, so there's been things behind the scenes, but also Brittany and Gina have both been great helps when it comes to working with students. And I think wherever you are and whatever groups you belong to, being able to share your experience and give back is a two-way street. You benefit from it, and then people greatly benefit from the connections they make with you. So, Brittany, tell us more.
hi everyone. So yeah, just to give everyone a little bit of a background, because most of you are students at URI. Gina and I are connecting 8 years later. We actually were both involved. We are both peer advocates at URI, and it was required for incoming new students to attend a seminar, and we covered domestic violence and things like that. But it's funny because a lot of the skills I learned there are transferring over today. So kind of just a funny story there, but I went to URI, graduated in 2014. I was on the women's rowing team. I actually only, that's kind of the entrepreneur in me. I wanted to make sure I wasn't in debt after college. And after a little research, I found out that they accepted Division I rowers, and it was a merit scholarship. So yeah, I never really rowed before. I was always an athlete. So yeah, that helped me get to URI. And I fell in love with, it was just my first time kind of being away from home and meeting so many diverse people. And I really fell in love with just everything that college. I was utilizing different services and getting so involved, and I love that. So after college, I knew I still wanted to be involved in athletics because I love it, but also because I felt like it introduced me to so many different walks of life. So I ended up joining a new sport called Strong Women, which kind of exploded. And I was documenting my progress on social media, and I always, even though it wasn't my major, I had a NASM certification to train people. And I always just loved, like, you know, they say follow your passion. I always just loved talking to people about physical fitness because I feel like, you know, it introduces you to different people, but also it just helps you. I don't know, I just feel like physically and mentally, it always helped me. And I wanted to share that with other people. So I was documenting it, and kind of without me even knowing what I was doing, I was starting a business because I wrote about my experience with training, and people were always asking me questions. And it was just an after work hobby I did after college, honestly. And then before I knew it, a couple of years later, I turned pro. And I remember one day thinking to myself, is there a way I can make money off this? And it started, I was actually really stressed out. Stress is something that unfortunately isn't very foreign to me. I'm always thinking too much. And I was getting a little overwhelmed, like answering people, like on social media, I think I would get like 60, 70, 80 messages a day. And I felt guilty because I wanted to help. I really did want to help and answer everyone individually, but it just came, you know, I wouldn't have had time to do anything. And I didn't want to be on my phone 24/7. So I started coaching, and I had seen a few other people do it remotely. And it was seriously one of those things that I just picked up the phone, called a few people that were doing it, and just started asking questions. And I jumped right into it. And I don't want to make this too long, but I seriously just started doing something. It wasn't like I sat there and pondered for years, like, oh, I want to do this. And I'm still not exactly where I want to be. And it's still always going to be evolving. So I just started. And then it turned into working with a few different brands and just different ways to make money. Honestly, like sometimes I'll endorse a product. I don't do this too much anymore because I'm really careful what I promote, because I always want to believe in it and not do it for the money. So I do a little bit of everything, and I always love to write. I do some articles, I do a couple podcasts with people. So yeah, I hope that's a good answer. I don't want to ramble too much.
It's a great answer, and it's definitely one we'll build off of, because I appreciate what you said of, I got started. Like that was the big thing. And then I think that it sounds simple, but it's not, for all the reasons you talk about, which is we get stuck in our own heads. And so we'll definitely come back to that, and both of you for your advice on it, because it's one of the questions that's come up on our other days on how do you stay motivated, what got you started, how can you do it, and really around the fear of getting started. Gina.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And Brittany, you said it perfectly, our story. I'm so happy to be here with you. And Audra, this is such an exciting thing to be involved with you ladies. So I guess I'll just jump right into it. So when I graduated high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do in college. I felt like it was a very big decision to decide, like, what am I going to spend all of this money on as I go to college, and what I'm supposed to do for the rest of my life. Like, how can I make that decision as I graduate high school? And I'm a very multi-passionate type of person. I don't pigeonhole myself into one type of industry or one type of thing that I like. I don't associate with just one thing. Like, I love all different types of things. And, you know, my mind you know, sometimes some people call me like I'm out there, which I am a little bit of out there. Like I'm very creative. I'm very like scatterbrained. You know, you ask me to be on time for something and it's hard for me because I'm trying to fit so many things in before I have to be somewhere. So it's, you know, I'm very multi-passionate and I love a lot of different things dynamically. So when I went into college, I knew I wanted business, but I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into one area of business like finance or accounting or marketing or anything. So when I learned of what entrepreneurial management was, I was like, oh, that's like a little bit of everything. I think that's great. And when I was in high school, my senior year, we were supposed to do an internship in order to graduate. And so the idea of entrepreneurship was introduced to me senior year of high school because my internship was with a small business in Rhode Island. And then I was like, all right, well, let me go into entrepreneurship management at URI and see where it brings me. I can learn all different areas of business and, you know, dabble in all the waters and go from there. If there's an area that I'm gravitated towards a little more, then great. If not, I think I want to start my own business someday. So I feel like I always knew that I wanted to start my own business. I just didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't have one idea in mind that said, this is what I want. This is why I'm going to school. I just knew that somewhere out there, like I was meant for something. And my motto, my personal motto is that there's a much bigger plan. And I've always believed that. That's a common theme for me. And I, no matter through all the twists and turns and the long way around and the long road and the challenges that you face, it always seems to make sense on the other side once you're past those challenges. So I decided to just go into entrepreneurship management, not really knowing where it was going to lead me, but knowing that someday I'm going to find a way to start a business. I don't know what it's going to be, but I know it's going to feel good. Fast forward a few years out of college, bring us to 2018. I love crafting. I love being creative and I love flowers. So, you know, I hate throwing away flowers, especially ones that I get from people who I love. And this is going to be really cheesy, but bear with me. So my boyfriend gave me a bouquet of flowers on Valentine's Day in 2018. And this relationship is one of the best relationships that I've ever experienced in my life. You don't know where it's going to go. As always, you never can predict the future. But what I did know is that this was the most healthy and supportive relationship that I had ever experienced. So when I received that bouquet of flowers, they were not only meaningful because they represented my relationship that grounded me so much and helped really build my confidence for who I am as an individual while also in this relationship, but they were the most beautiful flowers and I didn't want to throw them out. So when I saw them, I was like, I need to find a way to preserve these, but I don't just want to dry them out and put them on a wall or, you know, just keep them dried out in a vase for years and years. So I did a bunch of research and actually I was in a friend's wedding a few years ago who did create a bracelet for her out of her wedding bouquet flowers, but they were more like glass and perfect, like they were very perfect, very refined, absolutely beautiful. But I said, I want to find a way to make something tangible. I don't want it to look perfect, but I want it to be something that I can touch and I can feel because it's a symbol of my love and also of my mental being grounded. And, you know, I deal with daily anxiety. So I feel like this was a symbol of for me to stay grounded. So I did a bunch of research and somehow came up with a process to break the flowers down. Eventually they curate back into a clay where I can literally roll each bead and then they dry and then seal each bead and then string them into whatever piece people want. And I originally did this because I created the mala necklace that you see in the slide. It's a 108 bead mala necklace. And I wanted it to be a mala because mala is a symbol of peace and of being grounded. And I like meditating. I've turned to meditation over the years through my daily anxieties. And this is a symbol of just that. So not only was it the flowers of a relationship and a love that I just love this love, but also it was a symbol of being grounded and, you know, staying centered. It's something that I could wear throughout the day and stay centered whenever I feel like I'm getting off track. So I ended up wearing this necklace around. I would wear it to the job that I was at. I would wear it around my community. And I started making gifts for friends, and people would start asking me about my necklace and say, "Oh, I really love your necklace." And I would then go and explain to them that these are my flowers, that I actually made these, I handcrafted this. And people were like, "Wait a minute, can you do mine too?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not? Like this is great." And I kept getting asked to do these orders, and eventually, so I did this, and you know, it started out for me in February of 2018. By October 2018, I was doing enough orders that I was like, you know what, I feel like I have something here. I feel like I can do something with this. Like, this is a real thing. And I was like, maybe this is it. I was like, maybe this is the moment where it all comes together for me, because I knew I wanted whatever I was going to do to come from my heart. This craft is built on the most pure love that I've ever experienced. And the fact that people also want to preserve their flowers, also don't want to throw them out. I actually did someone's wedding bouquet that they've saved in their garage for 3 years. And I can do, I could do dried out flowers. I can do, you know, fresh flowers, the ones that are just wilted. I just can't work with moldy flowers. But I realized that this was something that people really enjoyed, people really like. And it can serve as just like sort of a fashion statement if you want to just, you know, have a necklace. And I throughout the past like year and few months, I've started expanding my products from the mala necklace to bracelets to choker necklaces, a little bead that sits right here, keychains, smaller malas. They come in 18, 24, 36, 54 beads. So we can really customize everything. And you can see that there are accent beads in my necklace, the white crystals in there, clear crystal quartz. So I work with every person to customize their piece as much as possible to speak to their story, what they like, their feelings. And we can use any gemstones that they like. The tassel, I ask if they have any pieces of fabric that might mean something to them. So if I'm preserving someone's wedding bouquet, I ask them if they have any extra pieces of their wedding dress or bridesmaids dresses or anything connected to that day that they want to incorporate. And if they don't, that's fine, because I have other materials on hand that I'm more than happy to use for them. But I really try to customize each piece as much as possible, because it really is a symbol of their story, whether it be a funeral flowers that are honoring a beloved, or, you know, wedding day flowers or anytime flowers. You know, I'm realizing that this craft can be fun and fashionable, but also can be very spiritual, a very spiritual connection. And I think that that's why I started my necklace, because I was spiritually connected to this feeling of love and being grounded. And again, I don't want to ramble too, but one other piece of it that I've developed along the way is I found dissolvable paper that I offer to people. And if they do want to elevate their piece to be a little more spiritual, I ask them to write down their intentions on this dissolvable paper, and I can quite literally dissolve it into their flower clay, so that they're wearing their intention throughout the day, and that they can just go back to that piece and remember, this is what I want to feel. And I'm reading this book, actually. It's called A Desire Map by Danielle Laporte. I don't know if you guys know about that book, but she brings up a good point about, you know, what are our goals in life? But I think it's more about, how do we want to feel in life? And I knew that this was such a good feeling, and I ran with it once I knew that people really, you know, were interested in this product, because it just feels good. So that's kind of how it started for me.
Gina, and that's perfect, because that goes into our next conversation on motivation. And I'm going to have Brittany lead, but right before she does right now, can you just tell us real quick, how long does it take to create a typical piece of jewelry?
So it takes around 8 to 12 weeks. It's a very lengthy made with love process, because everything is handmade and customized. Also, once I break the flowers down, it takes a while for the flowers to sort of build back up and curate into a clay. So I let it be this natural thing, and I can explain why I want to keep it natural. I've had a lot of people ask me if I want to automate the process and make it faster, but I have a whole explanation as to the reason why I don't, but it takes about 8 to 12 weeks.
Great. So at any time, people please use chat and Q&A, and I'll make sure I'll ask the question. Like I said before, quite a few times, motivation, confidence, how do I stay connected has come up. So I really want to specifically talk about this. Brittany, you talked a little bit about kind of that startup, that spark, and where it led, but can you dig in a little deeper and tell us more about starting up, the motivation and the teams, the people that really help to keep you connected to that startup and today?
Yeah, definitely. So I actually wasn't someone that dreamt about starting a business. I was always kind of like Gina. I dabbled in multiple things. I remember when I was really young, everyone told me get into sales, because one thing I did when I was really, really young, like 7 years old, was I used to collect rocks and like I would sell them to neighbors. And I don't know, I always just liked, kind of, to be honest, and now that I'm older, this has changed a little bit, but I always liked making money and knowing that I was doing it from something I did, not something anyone else did. Like, I really felt a sense of pride when I earned it myself. So long story short, I somehow went to college. I actually wanted to be in journalism. And I had a few internships and quickly changed my mind. So thank God for internships, because that kind of led me to where I want to be. But one of them was in Providence. I worked for a small prenatal startup supplement. He was a student at Brown, and it was for a final project. Then he got funding. So when I was working with him, it was very motivating to see how he was able to dabble in so many different things, from the actual, creating his business to branding it, marketing. And I thought that was pretty awesome. And he kind of let me do a bunch of different things. And I really loved that I could write one day and then have to make calls the next. I don't know. So I just kind of got the spark, I guess, my junior year. And it was always in the back of my mind, but I didn't really have an idea. And then I actually remember the very specific moment I decided to start coaching. And this is even before I was a legal LLC. I was sitting on the couch with my boyfriend. This was probably in 2016, I want to say. And I was sitting next to him, and he was in bodybuilding prep. And I was asked, he had a check-in with his coach, and I was like, have you actually ever met your coach? And he said, no, it came recommended to me from a friend. And I started asking him questions like, okay, how does she check in? How does she do that? Does she do that full time? How much do you pay her? Started asking all these questions, and it just like a light bulb went off. I was like, I remember I looked at him and I'm like, I'm doing that right now for free. And then I just kind of, I think it was a Saturday night. And I think that Monday, I made a post on Instagram saying I was going to start coaching. I had some experience, and I started just doing it in just the space I was familiar with, just strongman, because I knew how to program for it. I felt that I had a lot to offer. And I think 2 days later, I had my first call with a client, and she was like, what are your prices? And I hadn't even got that far yet. So I picked up the phone, called someone. I was like, hey, what do you charge? And I think I scaled it back, and then she couldn't afford it. So I just, I didn't even have like a set price list or anything. I literally just started. And before I knew it, I remember there was one point last year, I was I had a wrist accident, and I actually was doing it full time for a while. And it was kind of amazing to me, because you never really, you always doubt yourself, even though they tell you not to. But when you're doing something 100% on your own, it is scary, because you do always have this fear, like, what if I'm not good enough? And it was just amazing to me to prove to myself that, like, I could do it. And I learned along the way, and that's why I'm kind of I took a step back and I'm taking it in a little bit of a different direction now, because I realized that I didn't want to just coach remotely all the time. And a lot of people can relate to this right now with coronavirus and the recent changes, but it gets kind of lonely, always being by yourself. And I love connecting with people, and I feel virtually, especially via email, sometimes people actually express themselves more. And I think that's one thing that keeps me motivated is I love that I'm able to make a difference in someone's life. It's the best feeling in the world. Yeah, I guess that's what keeps me motivated in my business. And also I look to other people that do the same thing and have expanded theirs. Like, I don't see others as competition. I see them as motivation, because we can all learn from each other. And now that I'm older, it's like I respect anyone who has, who can take a risk like that and put themselves out there. So I hope that answers it. I know that was, again, a long-winded answer.
Well, no, and I think I appreciate one of the things you said actually builds off of a conversation earlier in the week where talking about just starting off, and you were saying you worked for a startup. And I think that's a huge point, because when we go into, why people are afraid, and this is the question, what's your advice for people who are afraid to start? One of the things you mentioned was, I got a little practice in a startup too. So what else? What else is your advice for, I have an idea, but I'm just scared, and I'm not even sure if my idea is ready?
So that's a great question, and one I continue to ask myself daily. I feel that, I'm trying to answer this in the best way possible. I feel that if you follow, and this is going to sound, I don't mean to sound cliche, but get some experience in different things, because let's say you have this idea, you want to start a business. You got to really figure out, like, what is the part that you like about that? Is it the creative part? Is it the financial freedom? Like, what is it that drives you? Because I think always chasing passion is important, and passion is not a destination. It's something, and it can be whatever, like what gives you energy that day. And I think it's something to really, Gina said, you said you meditate, and I think it's something that you always have to kind of go back to, and it's evolving, figure out like, where does this go? But also be fluid, because you can have this idea and you'll drive yourself crazy if that's where you want to go. It's just like, let it evolve naturally. As long as you're doing something a few times a week that, gives you passion, gives you energy, I think that's important.
So I'm going to have Gina answer the same question, but before she does, I'm going to repeat one of the things you said, Brittany, which was about, it's really what gives you energy. And I think this is part of the things that make us feel anxious and unsure, because there is a lot of follow your passion and pressure in that, depending on where you are in life, your age, your experiences, all these different things. Passion, it isn't in a second. It might be much more subtle, and it's the thing that feels good and the thing you keep leaning into. And like you said, it's the thing that's energizing you. It may feel very dramatic, or it may be a slower build, and having kind of patience with yourself through that. So Gina, for you, I'm scared to start, and I don't know if I'm ready, and I don't know if my idea is ready. What can you tell me?
So I think I had, as most people do, I had a lot of that. And like Brittany says, I have a lot of that still to this day. You're really putting yourself out there. You're making yourself vulnerable. I was like, who am I to be, a jewelry maker at this point? Like, what do I know? And, just because I like the way these look, like, how do I know that? What if I have an unhappy customer? Like how all these questions of, I wore my necklace for a few months, and I was able to kind of like test it out. Like, do the beads break down? Does it fall apart easily? Is this something that really is eternal? And I didn't want to, you kind of have this fear of, I'm saying all this stuff, but, you know, if something goes wrong, will I be a fraud? Like, if something, you know, doesn't pan out the right way, will it just backfire on me? And I think what has always helped ground me and navigating through the self-doubt and those questions that you're continually asking yourself is, as long as you're having it come from your heart, it's all going to fall into place. And I feel like for me, making sure that I stay true to my center is the most important thing. Making sure that I stay true to what I know to be good and true has always led me in the right direction. And as soon as something doesn't feel that good, it's like, all right, let me just keep track of that. Let me keep track of that feeling, because if it doesn't feel good, that means something might not be aligned. That means something might need to change. Doesn't mean that there's something bad going on. Just means that, you know, we might need to recalculate something here. And I think being flexible, and like Brittany said, you know, being fluid with yourself, allowing yourself to pivot and change and make decisions. And just because you said one thing one day and you might change your mind the next day doesn't make you a fraud. You're actually stronger because you've learned something that now you're like, wait a minute, I'm stronger now. I'm smarter now. I can make better decisions. And now I'm going to pivot and do something else. And I think, you know, as humans, having that self-doubt is almost a compass, because it helps you navigate where that next step will be. And I truly feel like, for me, at least in my experience, as long as I'm having it all come from my heart, and I know that it's coming from a good place, and I know it to be good and true, and, you know, function with integrity, it's going to pan out. Because I feel like with Eternal, when I started it, Brittany, you know how you said you remember the exact moment you wanted to start your business? Well, I had decided, I was like, you know, maybe this is something real. I was like, I just don't know what it's going to be. I just don't know the name of it. I don't know, you know, what is the name of this? Because it's preserving your moments. It's by preserving your flowers. These are monumental moments for people. And so what does that mean to them? Like, why do they want to preserve them? And I was thinking, like, you know, forever flowers, you know, forever love, like all these things that kind of seemed a little like, that's not the right thing. There was a moment I was in my car and I said, it's eternal. The word just came to my head. Like, I was in my car driving down the street, and I don't know what happened. Like, maybe I was listening to a song. I love music, and I kind of like express myself in the car and I sing, and I'm sure a lot of people do that too. But like, I just, you know, love music, and I let myself, like, when I'm in the car, just sort of de-stress and, you know, really just be in the moment. And I was like, it's eternal. That I literally pulled over on the side of the road, and I called my friend who's an accountant, called him up. I said, Andrew, this is the name. He's an accountant. I said, this is the name. Can you look it up for me and see if it's available in Rhode Island? He literally did immediately. It was available. I was like, can you draft me up my papers? I need to file this tomorrow. And like, that's just what happened. And he was, and I'm sure we'll go into this later in the panel, but being able, like, having that moment, it was like so clear to me. I was like, it has to be eternal. And I think those clear moments help dissolve the moments of confusion and the moments of self-doubt.
So, and I think that might be part of the answer to this question of what keeps you motivated in your business. So just what you said, those moments of clarity can help with the self-doubt, but what else keeps you motivated in your business today?
Yeah, I think it's knowing that I'm providing something that has such meaningful value to other people, knowing that it's bigger than me. You know, there's this podcast, it's called Christy B. Wright's, I think, I'm forgetting the name of it, but it's by Christy B. Wright. And I can circle back and give the name back, and maybe we can give the name of the podcast later. But she literally had quoted something from Oprah that said, this, like, lead through me, God, basically. Like, and I don't know, you know, I don't want to speak to God. Everybody has their own versions of what their God is, or universe, or the higher power, or whatever that is to them. But this isn't about me and my craft. This is about a much bigger, this is much bigger than myself. God or the universe is just working through me to provide this to someone. And it's one of those things, what keeps me motivated is knowing that I feel for some reason, I love connecting with people. I love connecting with humanity. I love hearing stories. We all have these like crazy parts of life, right? We all have these amazing, like great successes, things to celebrate, but we also have the lowest of the lows. And it's hard to kind of understand, you know, like going back and forth between the two. And it's one of those things of, I think what keeps me motivated is connecting with people and knowing that what I'm doing, or, you know, the piece that we make from their flowers is something that means so much to them, as far as, you know, wanting to keep a feeling in mind, honoring someone. It's all a part of life. And I think what keeps me motivated is, you know, the creativity. It's actually very therapeutic for me, although it could be very tedious work for people. You know, sit there, you roll beads. It's kind of like piecemeal work. It really is. You know, you sit there for hours, but it feels good for me because it's not only helps me like meditate throughout the day as I'm working on these pieces, but I also am working so closely with every person about how to customize their piece for it to represent what they want it to represent. And I think it's important to know that I think what keeps me motivated is just connecting with everyone.
And I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think that goes off of, you know, when people are talking about the businesses that are really successful, it's knowing your customer. So if you have a close relationship, you know, Brittany, one of the things you had talked about for starting a business had a lot to do with empowering other people. So if you know that you're honoring them in some way or another, and then you have that customer as your center, yeah, that makes complete sense for being and keeping you motivated in your business, but also staying true to what that startup was. So tell me more. We have 15 minutes left. At any point, please do put in those questions, and I'll prioritize other people's questions. But Gina,
yes,
let's go through these. Support team and the logistics to starting that business. You said, hey, I gave somebody a call.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel so lucky and so blessed. I feel like I have the best family and friends in the entire world, and I literally lean on them every single day. I have these people in my pocket that I just honestly, you know, my family and friends, I have to say, are some of the biggest supporters. Also, you know, I've tapped into them. You know, one of my first accountants was a friend. I also was working with a career coach for a while, you know, working with her. She was also sort of like a therapist too. And, you know, ideas through her of like, what do I even do? Like, how do I start this? And, you know, for me, it was figuring out how to file for the LLC. You know, I'm not very good at like numbers and accounting, that part of the business. I really don't like that. And someday, hopefully I can hire someone to take care of that for me. But, right now I'm doing it because, you know, I'm a one person business, but you know, reaching out to the experts, like I'm not afraid to ask for help. I think that's one of the things. So you pull together an accountant. I had my career coach, and basically just from there, you know, I didn't realize like you need to get a file for your federal tax ID number. I honestly didn't do that until months later. So you file for your tax ID number. You need to create a separate business checking account. You want to file for a separate credit card account just for your business, so you can put expenses on your business, keep everything separate. Because the point of filing for an LLC is that, you know, it's a separate entity. So it's creating it is its own brand, and it's, you know, protecting the individual. But I honestly didn't really know about, you know, get your own federal tax ID, create your own checking account. So, you know, these are things that you learn along the way, and you're like, oh shoot, like I should have done that months ago, you know. But so I think those are, you know, you learn as you go. As far as like other logistics, I think those were like the biggest things that I had to learn, and they were messy for me. You know, I was like, oh, all right, I got to do this, I got to do that, and once you file for an LLC too, like you're liable for some of your decisions. The state makes you responsible. So if you don't know about these things, you're like, oh, I should, you know, and you're like, how do I do that? And then you have to realize, like, because I'm selling a product, oh, I have to file for sales tax. What is that? You know, like, you know, you don't even think about these things. So as you go, I also think just like, I have another friend who started her own business as well. So I was sort of reconnected with her. I actually have a lot of friends at this point that are starting their own little like side hustles. And so we're all kind of, you know, kind of coming together, asking each other questions about what did you do here? What did you do there? And you kind of create your own, it for me, it's very organic, I think. And that's how I knew that I was sort of heading in the right direction, because all these people seem to just be popping up in my life that I didn't really, you know, we weren't super close with before, but somehow like now we are. Like I've even had a friend's sister reach out to me and help me create a business plan. And, you know, sometimes I get stuck in the minutia. So it's like, wait a minute, I really need to put together a business plan, but I got stuck on that because I'm just working on my orders because I enjoy that part, you know, like that's the whole point for me. But it's like, oh, maybe I should start thinking about it like a real business plan and monetary goals, even though that's not really what it is for me, but putting together maybe like a roadmap, you know? So it just, for me, it was very organic with all these things. But also in Rhode Island, there's something called Score RI, which is a free service to small business owners. And they have all types of people. They're all volunteers. You get paired up with a mentor, and you can ask them questions. You can meet with them. It depends. It doesn't matter like what area of business you have questions in. So that's an incredible resource, which another really good friend told me about. So really, it's just, you know, asking, you know, putting yourself out there, and somehow like these resources gravitate towards you.
Well, and I think, you know, I think about my first job, my first big girl job when I left URI was I worked at Enterprise Rental Cars, like many recent graduates. And I had never noticed one of their cars before. But as soon as I had to go through a training and I learned, everywhere I went, I could see, oh, I can pick that car out because they had these little E stickers. Never in my life had I noticed them. So I think if something starts getting on your mind, whether it's an idea or something you care about or a new image or a word, you'll see it everywhere. And for what Gina was talking about I appreciate both Brittany and Gina, because both of them are going, well, we started. That was the big thing. And it wasn't clean. It was, I'm not sure about my pricing. And wait, I have to have these ID numbers. Next week in our series is about resources. And as Gina mentioned, there's Score RI, there's URI Innovate, who's our partner for this series. We have a bunch there's the Center for Women in Enterprise. We have a mentor-mentee pair speaking next week. They got connected through Venture Cafe. There are so many amazing resources that can help you. And then our third week is about let's go step by step with the logistics, because it is a very confusing process, especially if you haven't gone through it. So Brittany, we have a question, and I think this is a good one for you. Would it still be a good idea right now to start a business that requires people interaction?
I think that's a great question, and absolutely, because, for example, yesterday I hired someone, and it was face-to-face, to detail my car. He was like a 19-year-old at Roger Williams, and he was just starting his business. I found him on social media, and I thought it was awesome that he was just trying to start. And I took a few pictures for him, and that was face-to-face. You know, I think, and I don't want to get political here, but I do think that we'll get past this, and people are starting to hopefully be less afraid. I mean, at least I live in Mass, I'm on the Rhode Island border, so it seems like things are more opening up. So definitely, I would say, don't let that fear of right now, the coronavirus, hold you back from starting, because it will get better.
I think you actually have, and another speaker in our series, they started their business thinking about emergency plans, and that's what's helped support them. And I think that is, you know, Do we stay away from starting a business that's going to be, one that requires people interaction? No, we don't need to, but we have many plans. Like part of sustainability is saying, if I cannot meet with that person face to face for whatever reason, how else are we able to connect? So there's actually some great opportunities. Brittany, tell us about your support team and these logistics to getting started.
Definitely. And it's funny because I feel like Gina and I are very similar in terms of like how we work, because I could totally relate with the whole filing for taxes stuff. That's something I still struggle with.
Yeah.
I'm always learning, you're always learning. But my support team is always just people, one thing, like I said, follow your passion earlier. And I learned when I was younger that being involved in athletics or any type of group, you're going to have support through like-minded individuals. So oftentimes, these people I meet, for example, one of the people I called when I first was starting the business was this girl, Garrett, who I met at the gym one day, and she was doing something similar. So I just reached out. And oftentimes I feel like people are willing to help. And, if you're willing, I'm always willing to help. So I feel like that comes full circle. But sometimes it can be intimidating to ask for help, just like it's hard to start. I think it can be a little intimidating to just make that first step, to send a message, to ask for a call. But, it's something that you have to do. And as you do it more, it gets easier. Like even Audra, we connected because I reached out because I wanted some help polishing up my resume. And I learned that I could go through URI Career Services. And I felt a little I felt like I was doing something I wasn't supposed to do almost. I'm like, is this wasting her time? Is she she's editing my resume? I don't know. I was a little afraid, but then, and look where it turned out. So that's kind of, I feel like an overall theme I'm talking about is not being afraid to take that first step, even if that first step is writing a message to someone on LinkedIn or going up to someone and asking, hey, can I ask you a question? Mm-hmm. Doing that.
Yeah.
So Brittany, I'm going to stay on you for a second. Failing forward to next steps. I think, both of you are so good about being vulnerable and saying, once again, this is messy. And I'm not prepared here, and I didn't know I had to do this here, but I figure it out. So do you have any example that you want to share about this? Oh, this wasn't what I thought, but I learned something really important out of it.
Do you want me to go first, Gina?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I can think of a perfect example of this. So it was last year, and I was coaching more, and I was like, okay, how can I make more money, but I can't take on any more clients? Like I'm at full capacity. I won't be able to give them all this undivided attention that I like to. And reached out to a few people, and they told me about like, oh, get in touch with this company. They'll pay you to do some product endorsements. So I was like, oh, that sounds really easy. A couple $100 a month just to post a picture or two. So I did it, and I became extremely anxious. And Gina talked about this, and it was because I wasn't following my heart. I wasn't following what I believed in. Like, I was posting about a product that, yeah, I liked, but this product wasn't life-changing. And I felt guilty because I was lying to people, I felt like, on social media. And it was like, it was great. I earned a few $100 just by taking a picture and writing about it. But I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So I told the company, like, hey, I'm sorry, I did it for 1 month. I'm not doing it again. And then I announced to my followers, like, hey, from here on out, if I post about a product, know that it's not an endorsement. I'm doing it because I like to. And that's why I kept my corporate job, because I knew to make a lot of money on social media, I'd have to do stuff that I didn't believe in. So now I'm scaling back, and I'm going back to more of my roots, and I'm not taking on any more clients. I'm not biting off more than I can chew. I'm writing more. And it's kind of like a slow process because I'm not seeing that money reward as quickly as I was before, but I'm sticking with the long-term plan. And again, doing something that brings me passion and doing something that maybe I don't have it all figured out right now, but I believe in it, so I'm going to roll with it.
Yeah, that perfectly. You really did. I honestly don't even know how else to add to that, because it honestly is, it is challenging, but you do somehow just figure it out. You, like what I had mentioned before and what you just said, you learn by the things that might not feel so good, and you pivot and you get back to center and you figure out, that didn't really feel that great, so I'm not going to do that again, and I'm going to do this instead because this feels better. And I think, like, the things that I have, things that would be deemed as failing for Eternal in the past couple months, there are, when I make a bracelet, if I don't size it correctly for someone, I have to have them like send it back to me. I have to redo it. I have to send it back to them. Like, it becomes this like back and forth type of thing. You lose a little bit of money because you're shipping it back and forth multiple times. But in a way, it's not really failing to me. To me, I feel like those things are learning experiences, and they're all there to help you get better at what you're doing, get better at your craft. You learn for next time, and you get better. It gets better. Like every day, it just gets better. You learn things, and I think instead of seeing them as failures, I think they're opportunities for growth. And it's, there's always going to be something that might go wrong, but it's never the end of the world. Like, it's always figure outable. And that's like another podcast or a book that I learned from someone else. It's like, it's always figure outable, and there's always a way to make it right. And as long as you're following your heart and your passion and doing it with the good intentions that are genuine, it's always gonna work itself out.
Thank you both on that. It's very interesting because I think we're starting to shift culturally, and we're starting to put more attention on failing. And even the word fail in schools is now, fail is first attempt in learning. And it's not about like, these aren't linear processes. We don't have to just be good at it. It's really about understanding and the process and the value on that. And so I think it's so important. The big shift that we all have to embrace is what you're saying, is owning it and going, this is not a bad thing. This is a great thing. I've now figured something out, and that's going to make me stronger. Gina, next steps. We had a specific question that's, what will your business look like in 3 years? But just in general, do you know what your vision is for the next few months or the next 3 years?
I'm figuring that out. I think I don't have specific goals for the next months or 3 years as far as, related to revenue or anything like that. I just want to keep doing the craft, really. Like, people keep reaching out to me and telling me how meaningful it is that they came across something like this. And like Brittany said earlier, the like-minded individuals you're going to align with those people, the people that understand what Eternal is all about, and that, there's a much bigger play here. Like, there's a much bigger plan at play here. Those are the people that are going to place orders. Those are the people that are going to come into my life. And I can't even tell you, I met some of the best people that have reached out to me to place an order, and it is just such a fun experience to figure it out with them. I never did rings before, and I did an order to set a bead in a ring setting, and we figured it out together, and it was really fun. Like, it's just really fun. And same thing, like with the wall hanging that's behind me, those are like larger and smaller beads. And I was experimenting with rolling different size beads. And I wasn't sure if the larger size beads were going to actually dry completely, or if they were just going to crumble, or, I didn't really know how it was going to work out. And luckily the larger beads did work out. And I was like, oh my God, I want a wall hanging. And I saved those flowers, are like over a year's worth of flowers for me. So it took me like a long time to get flowers and do that. And I don't really know, to get back to the question, I don't really have specific goals for the next 3 years. I just want to continue evolving the craft. Like I want to start looking into sterling silvers and golds and like figuring out how to make the chains a little, or the materials that I use, a little more elevated if someone, you know, wants to make it sort of like a precious metal piece. If they want to keep it, you know, the regular wire that I use, or, you know, the regular beads or anything, then that's fine. I think just figuring out different ways to evolve the product to kind of make it a little more diverse, to cater to different likes and dislikes that people enjoy, then just sort of like, I think my focus is to look into different materials at this point and different techniques. And one of the biggest things that I wanted to accomplish in 2020 was the dissolving the intentions piece, which I call infusing your intentions. And that was something that I was luckily able to figure out early on in 2020. So I want to just continue focusing on like infusing what your intentions are, and try to keep it more about that versus the piece itself. And eventually I'm thinking like, maybe I can bring this to other communities, like hold workshops or something like that. But because it is a long process, I would have to figure out those details. Like, what would the workshop look like? Because I can't do a piece on the spot with someone. It doesn't work like that. But I need to figure out like, how do I bring this to other communities? Can I partner with florists, wedding venues, wedding celebration planners? Like, who are some partnerships that I can work with to spread this craft? And like Brittany said, a lot of people ask me, they're like, oh, well, what if somebody takes this idea? And I'm like, well, this isn't like this isn't something that I came up with. Like, if you look online, there are some people that do something similar. The difference between my company and other companies is the intention piece, and that everything is handcrafted and customized. So if somebody decides that they want to do the same thing that I'm doing, I welcome that. You know, I feel like there's enough to go around for everyone. Might as well become partners. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where I don't see this as like competition. It's not a competition to me. It's just a craft and something a service that I want to bring to people. And the way that I see it is the more the better. So if I can partner with people where it makes sense to, and good people that are trying to just spread goodness through the world, then I'm all for it. So 3 years, I think partnering with people and elevating my materials is kind of where I'm at.
And I appreciate both of you kind of have eliminated some of this internal pressure, right? Like the idea of, it's okay, I'm always learning. I do have to kind of reflect and say, if it doesn't feel good, then it's not the right path. But both of you talked about competition, saying they're not competition. They're my motivation, or they're my future partners.
And that's one thing. I know we only have a few minutes. I want to jump in and say that I've changed as I've gotten older. You know, I used to, when I was first starting, kind of see it as a competition. And then I completely realized that's no way to live life at all. So yeah, and then it's funny because I used to only believe too in concrete goals, and I wasn't very go with the flow. And then once I started becoming more go with the flow in terms of my business, I realized it allowed me to think more creatively. Sorry, I can't talk. Instead of, you know, focusing on hitting that goal, like in terms of money or sales or anything like that. So that's just the last piece I'll leave with, is just to, you know, just every day do something that fuels your passion and not worry too much about the making money part or being where you think you're supposed to be in terms of your business.
And Brittany, any next steps and future mapping that you're doing?
Yeah, I've actually kind of taken a step back from coaching so much, and I've been writing a little bit more, and I want to figure out, I thought it was just coaching that I love, but I realized the part I love the most is actually kind of what we're doing right now, is inspiring people to start or to make a change. And I love writing about that. I love talking about that. And I spend a lot of time reading about that subject and listening to podcasts on that subject, and people come to me for that. So I'm actually trying to pivot more toward that rather than just, because training someone, you know, there is a mental aspect to it and like a therapeutic coaching aspect to it, but a lot of it is scientific. Like I go off I know how to make them lift this much weight. It's a mathematical equation pretty much. So I'm just exploring the creative realm a little bit more.
Great. So we are past our time and I still have questions, but I'm going to be respectful of everyone's time because I get excited and I always want to ask more questions. But I want you each to have the last word. What, for everybody who is bubbly thinking, maybe, sorta, what's one piece of advice you want to leave our guests today, our fellow URI community?
Go ahead, Brittany, you can go.
So I would say, and this is one thing that's just helped me, is when you are driving or if you wake up from a dream or something, or even after the session, maybe something went off in your brain. I don't want you to forget it. So I want you to write that idea down and leave it. You don't need to write an idea down and come up with a business plan right away. Just leave it and sit with it, and it'll come to you at random times. I strongly suggest writing these down in maybe Google Docs so you can access it anytime, because if you do it in a notebook, which is what I used to do, you might be on a walk or something and think of this idea, and by the time you get home, you forget it. So if you unfortunately, we all keep our cell phones pretty much glued to us. I would definitely suggest Google Docs so you can access it anywhere and just keep that brain spewing out those good ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And to build off of that, just do it. Just believe in yourself that you can do it. And I sound like Nike, but really, just do it, because I knew that when I started Eternal, I was like, I don't want this to just be a hobby. Like, this is real for me. I want to be taken seriously because I believe in this so much now that it's something that I just have to do the right way. And if it's something that you believe in truly, wholeheartedly, you just have to do it the right way. I had a few people tell me, well, why don't you just do it as a hobby, see if you make some sales. There's a lot of expenses that come with filing for an LLC, tax liability, blah, 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 all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, but this is a real thing for me. And I believe in this. And I want to be taken seriously, so I'm going to file the LLC. So just do it. And it's so simple. It's like the easiest thing to file an LLC. It's kind of scary. But yeah, I would just say on top, building off of what Brittany said, is pay attention to those light bulb moments. Pay attention to how you feel when you have those light bulb moments, because you'll know if that's a moment of revelation for you. And just pay attention to yourself in those moments, and just believe in yourself and just go for it.
Brittany, Gina, thank you so much for joining us today. It's wonderful to reunite the duo of the two of you, but also just the openness that you both brought to today. Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us. We will close here. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.